The most talked about movie of the year is one nobody has seen yet. I understand why Universal Pictures decided to go with that tagline when they resurrected Craig Zobel's canceled dark comedy The Hunt. But it's pretty dumb. Taken at face value, it is framing something good, word-of-mouth discussion, like it's bad, as though getting people talking about movies they haven't seen isn't the job of a marketing department, and something that studios actually would like very much, thank you. It's towing the line and talking around the thing in a childish way. We know that The Hunt is not the most talked about movie of the year, but it may be the most controversial. And that controversy, which resulted in the film being shelved for 6 months, happened sight unseen. It's never been entirely clear whether it was the series of high-profile shootings, the uninformed Fox News segment, or the president's apparent subtweet based on the aforementioned redundancy that took the project down for that period. But it doesn't matter anymore because we've got it now. So let's deal with it. Hello, by the way, and welcome to the Week Air Review. You can call me, shockingly, a liberal. And today, I'm talking about The Hunt. Anyone who has seen literally any of my videos knows that already, but I think it's important to clarify here. And in fact, I think that every single person who talks about The Hunt should preface it with their biases. Because what someone thinks about the state of American politics before they go into the theater is going to do most of the work in determining how they feel about the film coming out of it. But it isn't quite as simple as liberals will like it and conservatives won't, because The Hunt does not slot as cleanly into most worldviews as you probably expect. And each time you think you've pinned it down, it throws another wrench in. I think I've lost the metaphor. The film's opening shot depicts a billionaire's text chain. One person complains about the latest thing that the president has done, and then the woman whose phone we're watching, only seen from behind, responds with excitement about the upcoming hunt at the manor where they're going to go ham on some deplorables. The others join in. She laughs. Title screen. We cut to a plane where some rich douchebag is complaining about the in-flight menu when someone who is presumably a deplorable barges in, confused and belligerent. There's a fight, and then we see that woman from behind again as she brains the dude with a stiletto. The others balk, but she calmly cleans the heel. "No sentimentality, comrade," she says, quoting George Orwell's Animal Farm. But left unsaid is the follow-up to that: war is war. The only good human being is a dead one. It's not really clear if this faceless woman, Athena, actually agrees with the entirety of the statement, but the movie she's in sure seems to. I mean, we're only 5 minutes in at this point, and we have already gotten our first death. Many more will follow, and quickly. The hunt is on by minute 15, and it begins with a bloodbath. Which is all to say that the hunt is fast, brutal, and about as subtle as a YouTube comment section. This lack of nuance is applied throughout the cast, though, and it is actually the hunters who come off as the most cartoonishly unpleasant. Their dialogue is almost exclusively in caricature of liberal discourse, minus the whole anti-rich thing that is so critical to proper leftists. I have heard actual people say variations on many of these things with deep, sometimes cringeworthy sincerity, but there is nothing sincere about the way that any of this is presented here. Even the things that are objectively reasonable, like, by the way, climate change is real, are done supervillain style, with them being shouted into the face of a person who is choking to death. Members of the hunted have beliefs that are more objectively problematic, obviously, but because we spend more time with them, we get conversations where they aren't shouting about crisis actors or globalist conspiracies, so they seem a little more real, human even. But let's not forget, The only good human is a dead one, and we are definitely supposed to be rooting for all of them to go, with the single exception of the hunted that was nicknamed after the earlier quoted pig, Snowball. She is the only one who gets any kind of actual character development, while the rest are just eminently hateable. Though maybe you disagree with that, which gets back to what I was talking about earlier, how all of this lands is going to be largely dependent on where your sympathies lay at its start. And literally none of the people here have mine. Sure, I'm not a fan of folks who voted for the current president, but I'm also kind of open to the concept of bringing back guillotines for billionaires who, let's be honest, primarily voted for the current president. I'm not really on anybody's side here. Still, I fundamentally agreed with the philosophies of the elites in the hunt more often than I didn't, so the lampooning of beliefs that I do hold to varying degrees hit in a way that anything involving the hunted just didn't. And I imagine that someone who, let's be honest, didn't make it this far in the video would feel the exact opposite, laughing at the ridiculous beliefs of the wealthy and grimacing at the depictions of the people that they agreed with. And there is evidence that the hunt was originally going to go even further in all of this, but was restrained at some point during post-production. The trailer has a moment where a man talks about pretending to be an Arab refugee while identifying as white. The scene exists in the final film, but the joke is no longer in his identity, but the fact that he's from Connecticut. I'm really glad they changed this, because the original version kind of breaks the whole thing. Look, I understand that people are bothered by folks identifying in different ways, and certainly there are people who identify as something that they're not, but the joke here is that the man is clearly not white and the actor doesn't identify that way, but the character is doing it anyway, therefore comedy, I guess. But it's not funny. There's no joke here, and I want to believe that the creative minds involved are better than that. Unfortunately, they seem to have agreed. The script was written by Damon Lindelof, currently riding high off the success of his brilliant Watchmen adaptation, and frequent collaborator Nick Cuse, who wrote for Watchmen as well as Lindelof's previous show, The Leftovers. The Hunt was supposed to release before Watchmen debuted on HBO, and it's actually interesting to see it afterwards, because there's some big picture parallels specifically between the machinations of trillionaire Lady True in Watchmen and the actions of this film's billionaire hunters. They all see themselves as inherently superior to the racist white folks they decide to play God over. The one takes that more literally than the other, and they are similarly punished for their vanity. While director Craig Zobel worked with Lindelof on The Leftovers, he is probably best known for his 2012 film, Compliance. Compliance made for one of the most stressful movie viewing experiences I have ever had, depicting as it does the lengths people will go when they believe an authority figure is directing them. A prank call from a supposed police officer to a fast food restaurant manager results in the humiliation and violation of an innocent employee. It seems completely unbelievable, but I read about the cases that inspired it, and it's accurate. Disturbingly so. It combines the worst of a few different calls. Whomever made it did 70 over the course of a few years. But everything that we see in the film was actually done to someone, and that's horrible. Compliance may not be explicitly about how a dangerous strongman rises up with the support of people who somehow believe that they're fundamentally good, but it's also not about that. And there we find the true divide between the two factions of the hunt, actually. The deplorable dozen took the metaphorical prankster cop at face value, and the elites are angry about it. But in the process, these enlightened folks propped up a strong woman and somehow justified it all to themselves. They are not better than the people they claim superiority over. Which brings us to the point in this review where I don't feel like talking around things anymore, so if you haven't seen The Hunt and want to experience it fresh, please go do that and then come back and finish the video. Cool? Cool. So there are two big reveals in the third act. That the hunt is happening because a bunch of conspiracy theorists believed it was happening, got some rich folks canceled, and the rich folks decided to make the joke into reality. And also that our protagonist, Crystal, aka Snowball, is not the person that the hunters think she is. That the Justice for Y'all who complained about Athena on Twitter is actually another woman from the same town with the same name, albeit spelled a little differently. And the hunters inadvertently brought a literal soldier onto the battlefield. I want to talk about number 2 first, though, because it is the proof that the hunters are exactly the same as the hunted. They connected the screen name to a real name, did some basic digging on her background, and then took a photo of the wrong person and grabbed that one instead. They assumed the photo was correct, believed so strongly that they had fit all of the pieces of the puzzle together, but they hadn't. And it wasn't just Athena. She wasn't the one who sourced the photos, but she saw Crystal and decided to make her the leader, Snowball. Early on, Crystal mutters to herself that at least someone in the group, Athena, is smart. Later, she says to another hunted, Dawn, that she doesn't know if the folks they're up against are smart people pretending to be idiots or idiots pretending to be smart. And though Athena is definitely clever, the allusions to Orwell give up the game. She is a dumb person hiding under the veneer of intellectualism. As the two of them lay bleeding on the floor, Crystal throws the name back in Athena's face, looking at what Animal Farm means, rather than just what it says. And of course, this has been set up throughout the film. Again, the first thing we ever hear Athena say is the Snowball quote. That she was trying to project this onto someone else emphasizes her inadequacy as a leader and the inevitability of her failure. We never actually learn Crystal's allegiances, but it was clear to me the second time around that she, bare minimum, doesn't know what Manorgate is. The first time someone says the word, everyone around him knows what he's talking about. But later, Gary, the podcaster, decides to explain it to Crystal, and she doesn't stop him to say that she's heard it all before. Admittedly, she doesn't really care, but she is also presented as the type who would shut someone down for repeating known information. And something that Gary says during this rant is important for the other revelation, that he didn't really believe the Manorgate stuff, but forwarded the email to 50 people anyway. And that rumor spread, inspired by a hacking that leaked the text chain we saw in the opening shot. Athena's joke went viral on certain parts of the internet, and because it is a bad joke, she and everyone involved were kicked out of their various companies and foundations. Their lives were not ruined, because they're all still super rich and whatever, but they lost face, and that hurts. So sure, revenge. I get it. And I actually think the idea of turning this conspiracy fantasy into a reality is pretty funny. You know, it's the kind of thing that a child would come up with. And this childishness makes sense, because these billionaires are all basically spoiled children anyway, believing that cloaking their evils in a veil of irony will actually make their brutality into justice. But it won't. It can't. And it doesn't. 8.7 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching. The next video on this channel is actually going to be the 100th video. It's not episode 100, but if you count all of the extras that I've done, it's video 100. And so I'm thinking of doing a Q&A of sorts. So if you have any questions that you would like me to answer, feel free to put them in the comments. Anyways, thank you to my patrons, my mom, Hammer and Marco, Kat Saracata, Benjamin Schiff, Anthony Cole, at Blasian FMA, Magnolia Denton, and Elliot Fowler. If you like this video, great. If not, I'm sorry. If you want to see more, please subscribe. I hope to see you next week.